email, but
No communication with you.
okay.
Restart my computer.
Okay. I will call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for June 29th, 2023. It is 10:07 in the morning, and I will go ahead and lead us in the flag salute. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's a chorus. Okay, item C is calendar session. I added the St. Paul Rodeo Parade on July 4th. And then obviously the county offices are closed on the 4th. And then we have AOC meetings, closeout meetings on July 7th. Is there anything to add?
Is Willow Minor Parade on that?
No.
6 p.m.
Yeah, is it what time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
On the 4th.
on the 4th.
Okay. Anything else to add to the calendar?
Not for me.
And I just want to note that we do have an executive session scheduled for immediately following formal session, correct?
That's right. If the board is okay with that, we'd ask that we have that as the last item on the agenda for today's formal session to talk about labor negotiations.
Okay, great. Item D, public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. And we have received some written comments, commissioners, that I have responded to about parks. And so I will call for any public comment. If you're online, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item E, department updates. And we don't have any updates today, but we are joined by Joya Goodrum, our new Economic Development Director.
Yeah, so I'm going to invite Joya to come on up to the table.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning, welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you. Happy to be here. All right. So good day, commissioners, staff and guests. Thank you for allowing time this morning to talk to you about the county's economic development program and my role in that position. I'm delighted to be serving the county in this capacity and honored to have been chosen for this incredibly important position for Yamhill County. To give you a bit of my background in economic development, I worked as CEO for 6+ years at the McMinnville Chamber and another 6 years at 2 other chambers of commerce in California and Arizona. Additionally, I ran a small family business in Massachusetts, performed audits with Big Six accounting firm where I worked with large, small, private, and not-for-profit companies, and spent several years in higher education as a career and academic advisor, working with students and businesses. This role is the capstone to my career in business, economic development, and workforce development. As you will note from my life's work, I am passionate about supporting our business community and the employees that work for them. Since I have had the opportunity this week to meet with each of you individually, I have synthesized what we discussed into the following, which is not a complete list of everything we talked about, however, an overview of direction for the position and economic development in Yamhill County. There will certainly be more to come. So first of all, develop an economic development plan outlining goals for the next 4 quarters. Each quarter, I will present to you an update on the goals set out in the plan, and we'll discuss the plan as it develops. Follow up on the businesses and work already done by said core. This will provide an understanding of the status of each of those projects and provide continuity for them. Meet with strategic partners such as county department heads, leadership teams for cities within the county and their economic development department, leadership with chambers of commerce or business organizations within Yamhill County, Business Oregon, Mid-Willamette Workforce Partnership, AOC, and Mid-Willamette COG, for example. There's lots of other organizations that I'll probably be meeting with as well. These strategic partnerships are vital to the work we will do together for our business community. Develop strategies to connect with and inform businesses on economic development opportunities, for example, through personal connections, social media, newsletters, and blogs. We have a website, so we will be updating and revising the economic development webpage so that those blogs and newsletters would be posted there as well. In short, we will develop programs and work with our partners to retain, grow, and recruit business for Yamhill County. Again, I thank you for this opportunity, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Joya.
welcome.
Welcome to the team.
Thanks. I'm happy to be
You've
here.
met with all of us this week on your first week, so you're hitting the ground running. And Joya will be joining me tomorrow at Sheridan CTEC to kind of check in with them and see where they're at in terms of fundraising and private dollars coming in to make that school happen. So
Yeah.
looking forward to that. Yeah, it's a good thing you have a lot of energy because we're going to be sending you a lot of ideas.
I'm excited. I'm really excited about it, and I think we'll do some really wonderful things
Yeah.
together. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I am very encouraged and very excited to see that you have a definite plan, and there'll be accountability and interaction and
Yeah.
getting ideas and input. And the fact that you're conversant with the private sector, I think is huge. We really do see that's a great asset. I want to say that when I watched your work at the chamber during COVID, during the lockdown, and saw what I've called Joya's mother hen approach to her businesses, there was such a desire to nurture them and help them through this challenge. And to me, that was really encouraging, because that's what we need. Is we need an advocate for our private businesses in the state of Oregon. It's getting more and more difficult to maintain that level of optimism in this climate. So thank you for being here, and we are very grateful that you're joining us.
I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm available, you know where to find me.
We do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joya.
Thanks, Joya.
Thank you.
Okay, so item F is our work session. There's nothing today. Item G, our consent agenda. Looks like we have got some minutes and our sheriff's office contract, city contracts. And I just wanted to note, I know that we talked about potentially looking at those contracts and how they're whether or not they're covering true costs. So looking at those, it was interesting because some of them are very different in terms of salary schedules, ranging from about 140 to 170. So that's something to dive into, prior to next year's budget meeting, and just see if that's the true cost.
Absolutely. The other thing I was thinking is maybe reaching out to Carleton Police and seeing how much per officer, what their cost is to have police in Carleton, and we can kind of use that as a cost association with how much we're charging other cities. It's just another piece to it, I think, to gauge where we're at with this.
That makes sense.
Because I'm out to be fair, but we need to make sure that we're, recouping the true costs that it is taking for us to
Mhm.
provide services to the cities.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. Item H is old business. H1 is consideration of approval in the matter of a board order upholding the planning director's decision to approve planning docket E-02-23, approval of an agritourism use permit for tax lot 4312-00400. The applicant is Scott Picker, and this is continued from June 8th of 2023. I will move approval of H1. Is there further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great. Thank you. Motion passes. H2 is consideration of approval in the matter of a board order amending the Yamhill County zoning ordinance to allow for accessory dwelling units within the rural residential zones, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date. And this is continued from June 22nd of 2023.
Chair, I'll move approval of item H2.
It's a ordinance, so we're gonna have to read it by title.
Okay.
Twice.
Twice.
Shall I?
Oh,
Or unless there's anyone who, okay, okay. So in the matter of amending the Yamhill County zoning ordinance to allow for accessory dwelling units within the rural residential zones, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date. Pause. In the matter of amending the Yamhill County zoning ordinance to allow for accessory dwelling units within the rural residential zones, declaring an emergency and setting the effective date.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
None.
Do we need to set an effective date as part of the motion? No. Okay.
Is it today? Technically? Yeah, okay. Okay, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Let the floodgates open. Yeah,
Read it twice by title only.
by title only, yeah. Okay. All right. Item H3 is consideration of bids for tax lot R 6701 DB 07600 county owned tax foreclosed real property. This was continued from June 15th, 2023, and this is the Ash Street property. So we, in our last discussion, received multiple bids. We also received a letter from David and Jennifer Maxfield regarding their proposed usage of the home, which we asked for a follow-up on the letter and then just kind of to see a plan maybe of what they were planning to do. I have not seen a plan. I read the letter, but I didn't see anything come through as a plan.
Leave, excuse me, she communicated with Mary.
Okay.
I don't know if it was necessarily a plan.
So I did receive some information from the interventions program manager at Lutheran Community Services where there would be some collaboration with that. And basically Kathy Ann Myers said that she would work with the Maxfields on identifying potential candidates to purchase this home. And then went on to outline some of the other intervention programs and some of the people who would be good candidates for it. I think what this comes down to is that where are we in terms of fairness? You know, in the past, what we've done is we've said, okay, we have a house. Could it be used for social benefit in our community? And we've always made that a priority. Now we have had bids, and then we have another bid basically saying we'd like to use it for this. I know that there were apparently some other like USDA programs and a variety of other programs which could be considered when it comes to identifying candidates. But I feel at this point, while it is a really good idea and a lofty intention, we don't have enough information to say that this is in fact ready for prime time for this particular candidate. So I would love to find a way to offer a home to someone who's ready to get into a low cost home, but I don't know that it's entirely fair to do that when the bids have already come in.
And I hate to muddy the waters, but we got another bid for this particular property from a new bidder yesterday. Unopened. So we can either reject it. The board can either reject it or I can open it here if you want.
There was no closed date on the bids, correct?
Because there was no solicitation. They were
Okay.
all just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see the new one,
You want me to open it? Okay.
please. Thank you.
Actually, I think this is the same individual. Was it Rose Dodson?
No,
Was it changecommercial.com?
well, this.
Let me open up the other ones.
We got an Amber Stone, David and Jennifer, Trinity and a Chandler.
Oh, that's familiar to me. It is for $87,000.
That is higher than any other bid.
We have Chandler and Newville, Trinity, David and Jennifer Maxwell, and Amber Stone. So this is
Mhm.
different?
Say that again.
Well, it's a different price.
This, I just recognized
The email address is different. I mean, the email address is the same
The ending of it.
as the Maxfield inquiry. Let me just look.
There was confusion on that even when they were here.
That email
Yeah.
address seems,
So it's, and it's, yeah, that's why I noticed it. It's a TBD as well. So it's a different person, but from a changecommercial.com email address, which is the same as Jen, who is the one you've been communicating with.
correct.
So
Okay.
So they submitted a second bid that was higher.
it's a different person. So I guess technically it's a new bid. And it's for 87,000, which I believe is the highest.
Mhm.
By almost $5,000.
Right.
Well, I think since we don't have any clear social benefit plan that we could offer it to, and this is the highest bid, and apparently looks like there's interest from that concern to use it in that capacity. I think it's a win-win.
I agree.
Okay, so I think the motion would be to accept the bid, and I will start that process of requesting final payoff, and then I'll bring a deed to the board and finalize it.
So I will move approval of accepting the latest $87,000 bid
From Rose Dodson.
from Rose Dotson for tax lot R6701 DB 07600.
Okay, any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you. Thank you to the Maxfields. They seem like a very sweet, caring family, and so
Yeah,
it's great to see that.
appreciate that sentiment. We need to get some of these houses into the hands of folks who can really use them.
Okay, on to item I, other business. I1 is consideration of approval of an amendment to the agreement between Yamhill County Health and Human Services and Genoa Healthcare LLC and Genoa Telepsychiatry, Inc., Board Order 20-404 for updates to telehealth psychiatric medical services retroactive to June 8th of 2023.
Chair, I move approval of item I1.
Okay, is there further discussion?
None?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion passes. Item I2. Consideration of approval of intergovernmental agreement number 180824 between Yamhill County and the Oregon Health Authority for tort liability coverage effective July 1st of 2023 through June 30th of 2025.
Chair, OHA obligates itself to provide liability coverage to services that the county provides, county programs with our supervision and any of the programs, treatment or training. So I would move approval.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. I'm going to move item 3 down to switch it with item 6 because we have some budget items prior to, so we'll just move that down. So current item 3 would be consideration of approval of amendment number 5 to an agreement between Yamhill County and Homeward Bound Pets Humane Society for dog processing and kenneling service, extending the terms through June 30th, 2024, and increasing the cost of the agreement to $93,075 with an overflow kennel option. So this contract is for 3 guaranteed kennels at $85 per day, as well as overflow kennels as needed at the same rate per day. And this is what we discussed with the sheriff during the budget process.
And Homeward Bound has outlined their accounting of the increase and why it's necessary, and basically talking about all of the extras that they have been covering as for the county. And they've given us an accounting of that. Unfortunately, a lot of the dogs that come from the county that go to them are unadoptable, and it costs a lot for them to do prolonged boarding and medical care. So I appreciate
Right.
the fact that they've been willing to work with us, and we do need these overflow kennels in addition to the 3.
Yeah, it sounds like bite quarantine is a pretty involved process. It takes longer to do everything with the dog. And everything's going up in cost, food, everything. So. And just for some perspective, McMinnville, it looks like McMinnville is paying about $21,000 per year for 2 kennels.
That must be on a need, as need basis.
I think they have a dedicated 2. Is that right? So $29 a day times 2. Yeah, it's roughly $21,000 a year. But if you think about, how much ground the county covers, aside from the rural, it's Amity, and what, 5 cities, Amity,
It's a total of 11
Sheridan,
cities
Willamette,
because there's,
right, but without separate contracts.
well, according to Homeward Bound, they have, they're basically saying that they cover 11 cities, and they've taken a dog from every city listed, and then, and more, so basically more than the 5 dogs. And the city has transferred 13. And, so you can't compare county, city.
Yeah, well, and there's, the rural parts of McMinnville, right? I mean, there's other things to consider, but I think if you look at just what McMinnville's paying versus the county, considering the square footage that we have to cover, it's comparable. It doesn't seem like it's over the top, so.
And I should mention, it's part of Hillsborough is also being counted into that. So that's where they get the accounting for 11 cities. So anyway, we do have the breakdown.
Rural Hillsborough, okay. Okay, do I have a motion to approve item I4, item I3?
So moved.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes. Thank you. Item I4 is consideration of approval of amendment number 3 to an agreement between Yamhill County and WellPath LLC to provide an initial 30-day extension of the current agreement effective July 1st through August 1st of 2023 for the delivery of inmate healthcare services in the Yamhill County Correctional Facility and Juvenile Detention Facility. So this is an extension for 30 days plus another possible 30 days upon mutual agreement. But hopefully we don't have to.
Yeah,
get to that point.
as reflected in the amendment, we received notice earlier this month from WellPath that they're terminating our agreement to help with the transition. They're willing to continue our current agreement on a month-by-month basis. We're working on finding a replacement provider, and hopefully that will happen in the month of July. So we won't need an additional extension from WellPath, but appreciated their willingness to assist with that and make sure we don't end up in a bind where we're sort of between providers at any one point in time. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to work out the contract with a replacement provider before we need to have an additional extension with WellPath. But understanding is the rates, the original contract was through January of next year. So the rates for that, the remainder of this year had already previously been set. And from what I've heard from the sheriff's office, they don't anticipate any increases in cost for this initial 1-month extension.
Okay. All right, I will move approval of item I4. Is there further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item I5 is consideration of approval of amendment number 1 between Yamhill County and Homeward Bound Pets Humane Society. Board Order 20-037 for clerical services, including the licensing and redemption of lost and found county dogs at a rate of $7,077 per month, effective July 1st, 2023 through June 30th of 2024, with a 3% per annum increase through June 30th of 2026.
Yeah.
So this is a, what is that, 3-year contract for licensing. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. Okay, that brings us to I6, which is consideration of approval of resolution 23-06-29-1 in the matter of the adoption of the Idaho County budget for fiscal year 2023-24, setting appropriations and levying taxes. And it looks like we have bumped up to 191 million roughly. Is that the highest? Because it was the second highest.
It's
Still the second highest.
still the second.
What was it? 194,
The current fiscal year was the highest at 199.
199. Okay. I remember from last year. So second highest budget, obviously it's increased a little bit from our discussions.
Yeah, the changes that the increases were based on the budget hearing and the deliberation list and the changes that were incorporated into that. It did raise the total budget amount from the approved budget to now what's being proposed as the adopted budget and the total amount that you see in the resolution.
Okay. And so the public outreach that we did for the budget is not the final adopted version. It's what was.
Correct. The budget
Initially
tabloid
proposed.
is part of our budget hearing process. So
Right.
that's the approved budget that goes out to give notification to the hearing, the legal requirement to notice the budget hearing that was held on
On the 15th.
the 15th.
All right. Is there discussion around this item? Do I have a motion to approve?
Chair, I'm wondering if the process-wise, we can have discussion prior to a motion. I mean,
I mean, do you
no,
believe there to
that's
be
fine.
a
Actually, I just want to make sure.
distinction or? Yeah.
No, I do have a number of things I'd like to share, but I think, I mean, I'm not ready to make a motion, but I do want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean,
this.
typically, motion would be made, discussion would be had. If
Okay.
out of that discussion, we need to withdraw the motion and introduce a new motion, you could do it that way.
Okay, well, I can, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 23-6-29-1 and open it up for discussion.
Okay. So Chair, I know we've talked a lot about the concerns we've had about the sheriff's budget and what we're going to have to address in the coming years as a result of this. And it's required a lot of remediation on the part of our chief budget officer, and it's taken money from other departments to make this budget pencil out. And I think that going forward, if other departments and that if there's going to be a request and a need to take money from other departments, then I believe that it would not be unreasonable for there to be more scrutiny on this budget going forward. So we don't get to the place where we're at the 11th hour and we're looking at something that just doesn't work. I believe that the board has historically and of late, the last year or so, really made an effort to, whenever there was a request, to support this department because it is critical now more so than ever. Not only the high profile cases that our deputies are involved in and our detectives are involved in, but the day-to-day where they're putting their lives in jeopardy. We have always stepped up to support them in finances and in anything that they needed to support their positions. So I want to make that clear and reiterate that. I also am concerned that going forward, this is unsustainable, and I don't know where we would get the money to continue to do this. However, public safety being the most important thing we do here. So I don't think it's unreasonable for us to really look at this budget, look at expenses, look at checks that are written to cover expenses, look at the individual itemization of expenses that are put in, and take a look at this, because other departments are being asked to sacrifice to make this whole. So as we heard, and I believe maybe you pointed out at one of our AOC meetings, the chair of the Washington County Board of Commissioners said they've got a bigger budget than we have. They're not allowing overnight travel, lodging, meals. If they go to a conference, they're going to drive to Eugene and then drive back the next day. So there's no hotel costs. I think when you're looking at being able to tighten your belt on things like that, we have to be able to do the same. Look at travel, look at meals, look at entertainment, look at all the ways that we are spending taxpayer money in this department and whether or not it's something that can be curtailed. I just think it's only fair.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think my understanding of prior boards as well as this one is that we have fully supported and have said yes to the sheriff's department whenever there was a need, because most of the time those are critical needs, right? So we have said yes. I think my frustration is that every budget cycle, we seem to kind of come up against this crisis, and it's every year, right? And if you're looking at how we budget, it shouldn't be that way. We should know what's coming, in plenty of time to address issues in real time. And so to Commissioner Johnston's point, I think that this is something that we need to perhaps schedule some work sessions over and tackle this issue
Soon.
much sooner than,
Yes.
April.
Yep.
So that we're not coming to April and saying, oh, well, there's a, $1.5 million hole in the budget. Well, how did that happen? Because this was our understanding. So,
Well, and when you get down to constrained times too, and you're not even done making the decision of how we're going to fund certain things of it, but yet the rhetoric is already out there of, oh, we're going to short everything. Wait, we're not even done yet. So let's just relax. But I think if we can stretch that out a little bit, I think it'll relieve some of that pressure on the perception that something's going to get cut or that we're not going to come up with a solution. We will come up with a solution. It's just,
but your options are limited when
Yes.
you don't provide yourself enough time.
Right. Yep.
So I think that's a good suggestion for budgeting practice, that maybe we start to tackle some of this stuff a little bit sooner in work sessions or whatever, and just so we have a better understanding of how historically we've gotten to the point where there is a significant hole, right, going into each cycle.
I wouldn't
So-
necessarily, and to Commissioner Sterrett's point of going through the sheriff's office budget, on traveling expenses, all that, I think that just needs to be across the board too, not just a microscope on the sheriff's office, but as a county as a whole,
yeah.
and start
For sure.
looking at that stuff. And just because eventually it's going to, whether it comes from the general fund or not, we need to save as a county to be able to start funding the public safety. We may, we just need to start keeping an eye on every department.
The difference is that in departments that are where you have elected officials. So prior to the last 9 years I've been here, commissioners could pretty much spend what they wanted to spend on travel. And some commissioners, very frankly, took full advantage of, and actually, I think took advantage of just spending without, there was no one to say, no, you can't. In an elected department, they can do that because there's nobody above them to say, no, you can't. The difference is in other departments, there is a department head and a supervisor that will say, this is not our policy and you can't do that. For instance, when I first got here, I noticed that in HHS, if they were going to a conference in Portland and it started at 8 and ended at 9, they would drive back, then drive back again. And this was the policy, is not to spend the night there. But then again, if you looked at the commissioners, they were going to Salem and spending the night just not to have to drive back to McMinnville. So I asked about that, and there should be an across the board for not only every department, but elected officials should have that same level of scrutiny and the same policy. And if that's not being done, then we're going to start to see perhaps places where it can get out of hand. Which is why we've had a discussion about, are we going to have that code of conduct where we actually, codify that for the Board of Commissioners. I haven't seen it necessary on this board, but I've seen it in past boards where it was necessary and it didn't exist.
Okay.
And if I may, I'll just kind of join in because covered kind of a lot. I think the biggest thing that I would emphasize that as far as discussions leading up to the budget, I think it's all about spending and it's the expenditures being made. Which we do track and we do have reports that we have available and can make further available to see some of that. And we could even tailor some of the reports down to if there's specific areas that the board would like to see, whether it's department or if it's expenditure categories or items such as that. So that's kind of the first part, because we do oversee all the expenditures, but a lot of times, it's up to the departments to manage their budgets and spend within the authority that they're giving within the appropriations that we're setting by adopting the budget next year. And so, that's one means. The other part, if there's interest in reviewing, revising, adopting a new travel policy, I have a note here that because we do have a travel policy, and if that's something that the board would like to consider and take a look at and see if there's revisions that need to be made, we can do that as well. So as far as scheduling work sessions, I'm more than happy to get and look at the calendar and kind of put some work sessions together to kind of go over expenses, what we're looking at. And we'll also keep an eye on, via the procurement, because I know we made some revisions to the procurement and we do try to keep an eye. My first eye is looking at one, is it an eligible expense? Is it something that can be spent within the, but at the same time, it gets really hard because I think you've seen some of the check registers or some of the things we go through, the number of checks that we process within a single week. It does take some time to go through that, but anytime that there's questions about particular expenditures or anything like that, please let me know and I can connect with Mike and Justin and we can get you more details on those reports. So,
Yeah, and those have been really helpful for me, even, I'm sure you love getting the list of questions of what's this and what's that, but it's actually,
Mhm.
it's actually quite helpful because, then I learned that we had to tow an RV, right? That cost us
Yeah.
almost $4,000.
right.
So that's a very, at least for me, that's a very helpful practice to look at that and say,
I
okay,
think once we go through it over and over, the questions hopefully will start dwindling because we'll understand it more on how the level that it's at. I mean, it's very in depth and very
Yeah.
detailed. So, yeah.
And then kind of back to the matter as far as the actual budget adoption, I would just further add and keep in mind that with the fact that we still have, we have a tentative agreement on one, but we still have 3 open contracts right now that depending on what happens with those 3 open contracts, there's also the possibility we may have to make some revisions in the fiscal year, whether that could result in a supplemental budget or some further changes during the fiscal year. That is going to be something that I'm also keeping an eye on because this was a really difficult budget to build with the fact we don't have this many contracts open at a single time and that haven't been settled yet. And we reached a tentative agreement on one of the contracts a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah, it's been complicated by the fact that we have a contract that should have been done this time last year that's still pending.
correct.
So that's further
So-
complicated.
So there's some uncertainty that's, within this budget, but at the same time, there was a ton of work that went into building these budgets and we did it all while learning to use a new system
Mhm.
that was doing putting the budget together. So, if you have any questions, it's going to continue to be a work in progress. I mean, this is something, you know, yeah, budgets year round for me.
Yeah,
I'm
nonstop.
always,
Right.
Yeah.
so.
Which to that point, what would be like the best timings to have work sessions, like in October when it kicks off for the next fiscal year? And then maybe one in December or January, or
Well, the first big one is always in December. There's a work session in either the first or second week in December, which is the really the budget kickoff and that's probably it's gonna, I was talking to Justin this morning. I'm already starting to do some work to prepare for that, because that is the discretionary discussion. And that seems to be the area where we have the biggest challenge. Although I think there's going to be further discussions based on what it's looking like the state's going to adopt for a budget, that Department of Community Justice and the adult PMP budget is going to be less than the governor's recommended budget. Right now, Jessica's still working on that. So that's going to have some impacts there. But not necessarily that would necessitate updating the budget. But again, it seems like the biggest challenge is on the discretionary revenues. And so that's going to be in December, having that discussion, looking at those allocations and determining a plan on what those base allocations are going to look like when we start building for 24, 25. But I think there's going to have to continue, like you were saying. I think a good time frame is probably September, October. Hopefully by then we'll have some answers of where we're at with some of the open CBAs. I'm fingers crossed, very optimistic, and so we'll have more information available. The other part that I would also add is we monitor the budget, because I think sometimes there's a lot of matters that come before a lot of expenditures, and if there's questions about those, what that budgetary impact's going to be, if there's more analysis that needs to be done on some of those items, let me know. And if there's needs to have more scrutiny or more information provided by the department head, I can circle back and get that information from the department head and ensure that you have that, so you're able to make an informed decision on whether it's a new contract coming forward or another agreement, or adding position authority, or some of these other items that you see as routine business kind of throughout the year. If, again, if there's specific questions on, and if you don't feel like you're getting the information you need on the budgetary impact, please let me know and I'll circle back with that department.
Okay. The travel policy doesn't apply to elected officials at this point, but it could.
I'm not sure. I don't have the policy in front of me. We could take a look at it.
Okay.
And
I think whether the speaker sort of made is there are some sort of expenditure limitations into the budget and the policy around that, which have a source in directly applicable to elections. Maybe that's the distinction, but
well,
my understanding is possible policy.
I mean, there's a policy. I'd have to look. It's been a while since I've looked at it specifically. And because I don't know off the top of my head if it's applicable to elected officials as well.
Okay.
There's really not any limitations, because we appropriate at the fund level, not at the line item level. So, I mean, you do set limits on that budget, but that doesn't mean that if a department only has $500 to spend in the travel line, that they're restricted, they can only spend the $500. They'd have to, they're able to overspend that line as long as they're not overspending their total appropriations for that fund. So anything that would be like making mention of like a distance for overnight travel, that overnight should only be if you're traveling out a certain distance. That would be a policy standalone policy document, and that could be something that we could bring a draft forward for the board to discuss and consider revising or adopting a new policy.
I know that HHS had one. And that was what I was looking at saying, how come we don't have that? Because it seems a little bit, hate to use the word equity, but inequitable
Mhm.
that you're telling people driving back and forth in one department, they have to not spend the night, but then the commissioners can go to Salem and camp out for the weekend and order room service.
Yeah, there's two tiers. You first have a countywide policy. And it's kind of like you might have a more general countywide policy, and then a department can adopt a more stringent policy as long as it's still in compliance, because a lot of times when you get to the department level, they'll get more into specific about the types of trainings and
Right.
the sequence and the process and how you request that and things. So I think the policy you were looking at was a departmental policy for HHS. The sheriff's office also has a departmental policies as well. So and again, if it's up to the board if you want to, who the policy applies to. And I'm looking at Jody, because Jody loves writing policy, but
Say
but
that like it's a bad thing.
no, it's a good thing.
You guys are exempted from the countywide policy.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Can we write something that applies to all elected officials, or is it just us?
You can.
Okay.
But the mechanism for enforcing it is a little tricky.
It's OGEC, right?
What's that?
So that would be OGEC.
Not really.
Not really.
No, I think it's Ken and Christian.
They don't have any authority to.
But no,
I
they
think-
don't. No, they don't. I mean, for elected.
Okay, I know I'm gonna
They
get
can't say, hey, Kit, what's this $400 for gummy bears? You know, I mean.
Yeah.
Like my
So the way
bears.
we've traditionally viewed it is if the elected officials put it down as an expense that they feel is an appropriate one related to official county business, that's really all the scrutiny that it's given.
There's no oversight.
Well, there is
I
in the
don't know that-
past, as kind of an example,
The budget, I think the budget process, but
the meal reimbursement policy is a good example.
Yeah.
It clearly states can't spend it on alcohol.
Mhm.
Years ago, someone
that's where.
went to a conference, mistakenly didn't catch that the receipt when they submitted for expense reimbursement, it had a drink on there. I had to go and talk to the elected official and say, hey, you need to revise your
See, I
expense
think that's what Jody
reimbursement.
was saying, elected
Right.
officials are not technically
I know.
subject to the policy.
But I went and talked to, and,
Yeah.
it was the elected official at that time said, oh, I didn't mean for that to be included,
Sure.
and was able to amend that.
And that's what I was saying earlier, like the spirit has always been that.
Right.
If elected officials choose to, it
Right.
would be best if they did follow the.
But
policy.
we
yeah,
don't have any
enforcement is tricky.
recourse to say, you shall not,
Yeah.
because we don't
But-
have a policy.
But we can
Yes,
curb bad behavior by coming forward with, maybe during the budget process, reports of expenditures, right? I mean, they're all logged.
Mhm.
Yep.
Reimbursements are all logged, so we do
They're all
have that
public record.
information.
and I think you could also make elected officials subject to the county policies on travel expenditures,
But would that,
recognizing that how you would actually enforce that against.
Yeah.
Certain elected officials could be tricky.
code of conduct would be a way of addressing that instead of it being
Sure.
employee policy. It would be a code of conduct for elected officials. And I think your suggestion that we look at expenditures during the budget process to say, this looks a little out of whack, and how is this not lining up with, now you haven't asked, but there's been a lot of expenditures in this area. So everybody knows going forward, it's going to be something we talk about.
Okay, so it sounds like we're maybe looking at a work session in the fall as we get a little bit closer to December and go over expectations or.
So in October, can you know your initial message to departments? So maybe we have, isn't that right or not? Roughly?
No, usually with kicking off the budget process, I have the work session with the board in December. And then based on that work session on the discretionary allocation, then we finalize the budget instructions that we then issue in January.
Okay. So we definitely would want a meeting around that time, but maybe a little bit more specific about getting in detail about the sheriff's office, maybe September, October.
Yeah, and just, I mean, even consider to check in on the budget. Where are we at?
Mhm.
Are we falling behind on some
Yeah.
funds
Yeah,
or, you
may
know,
not
some
even
line
be
items?
for the upcoming budget,
So-
maybe the one we're still working on. so.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
And we still have dog control, which is going to be a whole nother discussion. So maybe work sessions for that as well. Soon. Maybe we could be thinking about those for early September or,
And I have some more updates, but I can wait until the action on this item as far as next year's budget process as well. I'll
so I had a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion?
None.
none.
All those in favor of approving resolution 230629-1 signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you very much.
All right, and so now that that's been approved, one of the other items that we're going to be looking at over the next several months with new systems coming online and based on the discussions and some of the information that has come up, it's another conversation I was having with Justin and with Mike is looking at our budget calendar and some of the processes. That's going to be something that I'm hoping to have further discussions later in the fall as well. I'd like to revisit the calendar a little bit. I'd also like to, especially our past practice of waiting till the last formal session to adopt the budget. It's this always makes me nervous because we have to take this formal action. And if for some reason we didn't have a quorum today or couldn't meet,
Yeah.
we'd be scrambling.
Mhm.
So that's another example. And then there's also, because when this gets adopted, we also have a lot of work that we still have to do as far as uploading the budget into our system so we can process checks come Saturday. And so we're going to be looking at timeline presentations, kind of revisiting the calendar. And so just so you know that in addition to the work sessions and discussions that we have leading up to budget, we're also working at making some improvements and maybe streamlining the process a little bit, more of a condensed calendar to allow for more discussions, make sure that we have a clear picture on the budget. And I still want to make sure that we're compliant with Oregon budget law and it's a fully transparent process. That's still critical to me, but I'm also looking for some ways that we can make some improvements. So that's something that we're preparing for next budget year. And then the other part is the discretionary allocation. I think at this point, with all of the strains on the discretionary, that's going to require a lot of work this fall and into December before we put out those budget instructions. And then we're going to have a ton of work putting budgets together. Because again, I still have the same concerns. And it's all about the general fund. It's all about those discretionary funds. That's where we're having challenges. And so we're going to start working on that probably earlier than we normally do. But again, I work on the budget year round. So if there's any questions, thoughts, ideas, and I took a lot of notes based on the discussion, and we'll get that calendar put together for work sessions. And again, if there's any questions or anything, please let us know. And thanks to the budget team and the board and the budget committee and everyone, and all the departments and all the staff that put so much work into this budget. it's, again, I emphasize it every year. This is one of the most important things that we do each year because we have to make sure we can operate come July 1 and services are still being delivered. And I'm pleased to say we have a budget. We're open for business next week and we're ready to continue to deliver the critical services that we provide throughout the county. So thank you.
Does that mean that you don't need to be here till midnight every night? Or is now you start doing it for next year?
I'll scale it back to 11 or 10.
All right, sounds like a plan.
So you were mentioning with Oracle, how you could maybe fine tune reports or whatever. And if you're looking for feedback, I think ideally for me, just as a very high overview, if you go discretionary at a general fund, if you can start with highest dollar amounts and just kind of give maybe the top 50 on there and just start with that as an overview. So we can kind of start digging into some of those and just seeing what they are, wrap our heads around them.
No, that sounds good. Okay.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. So if there's nothing else for other business, we will move on to our public hearings. There's nothing today. And item K is announcements. Anyone have announcements for today?
Madam Chair, if I could ask, we did hear from the department head who's going to be participating in the executive session. He's got a hard stop at 11:45. So if there are announcements, if we could sort of pause, recess, do the executive session and then
Okay,
hold announcements till after.
sure,
Is that
that works.
Yes,
that
agreed.
work?
Yes.
All right.
Well, if no one has announcements, would it be easier for us to just adjourn?
Yes.
I don't think we can.
Right, we're technically, since we didn't previously notice
Oh, I see.
the
Okay.
executive session separate, it needs to be part of
Gotcha.
formal.
Okay.
But we can recess
Right.
and switch over and then come back and adjourn.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is just like when we typically recess, we're going to hit pause on the recording and we're going to mute the audio and video, and then we're going to open up a different Zoom invite. And so that way, if Nicole or if there's anyone else from the media, if you email me, I'll make sure you get a link to that. And then once we adjourn that meeting, then we'll restart formal session and then close that out.
Okay, so we will recess. It is 11:04 and come back after executive session.
All right, so we're back from executive session. No final decisions were made in executive session, but the consensus of the board was conveyed to staff.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. So we will pick up at announcements. Commissioners, any announcements today?
Today, we will have our first meeting of the local alcohol and drug policy committee, which hasn't met since what, the 80s? No, well, it met probably about 9 years ago, but anyway, it's sort of being reconstituted and there's high hopes that this might be able to be an effective tool in our community. So I'm looking forward to that this afternoon.
Great. I mentioned before, Joy and I are going to go head out to Sheridan CTech tomorrow, so I will bring back an update on where they're at.
Great.
Nice. After tomorrow. And the only other thing I had was that just a reminder, county offices are closed on Tuesday. Not Monday, Tuesday.
Fireworks. Yamhill County Transit Advisory Committee, they need to start the process of what we're gonna be doing for fares, whether we're fareless or gonna start charging or a hybrid version between that. Cynthia has a study that she's gonna try to get done, but I don't know if she's gonna come to us to see if we want to do that study or not. I don't know quite where we landed on that during that meeting. But anyway, that's coming because it's going to take quite a long time to implement whatever way we go. And no matter what, if you go fareless, obviously you have to find funding, and Cynthia knows all the percentages and costs and all the rundown. So pretty sure she's going to come before us to start that process. Just a heads up.
Good.
So.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
I'll just add on to the transit discussion that, as you know, that we've been working on a plan to bring the transit manager position in-house. I'm pleased to say that we completed the process, made the offer, and Cynthia will be continue to be our transit manager, but is actually going to come in-house and no longer be in that contractor position. So
Great.
we've extended an offer and she's accepted.
Wonderful.
Great.
All right. There's nothing else for the good of the order. I will close out our Board of Commissioners formal session for June 29th, 2020.